Alright, I think today is the day that we're going to get to Maiden, the flying fish. Supposed to have a small, very small window of opportunity this afternoon, if they got the wind forecast correct, to put this in the air for the first time. Okay, so there's a couple things I forgot to mention when I was doing the first look at it. It does come with another canopy that has a cavity on the top of it where you can mount an FPV camera or a recording camera, and it also has a separate insert. There's a cavity in the nose where you can mount an FPV camera as well. I put the solid insert in the nose, and then it also has a separate insert that you can use in that cavity in the nose. I also opted to put a landing gear system on it rather than landing skids, because with such a narrow fuselage, it doesn't lend itself very well to landing skids. So they ended up adding a little more weight than I'd planned on. I wanted to try and keep the landing gear weight down to somewhere between 12 to 15 grams. It ended up adding 19 grams to the total weight, which brings my all-up weight now with a 3S 950 milliamp hour LiPo to 238 grams. So I still have 12 grams to play with, and with most of the all-in-one FPV cameras that I've used in the past, they typically only add about 5 or 6 grams of weight, depending on what kind of mount you use for them. So I would be able to put an FPV camera on here and still stay below the 250 grams, even with the additional 17 grams of weight from the landing gear. But it needs that where I land. So the other thing I wanted to show you was the amount of space that is in here with that 950 milliamp hour 3S LiPo, and it's a 25C. So it's pretty snug fit, and I am able to get it forward enough in order to get it balanced pretty well on the stock CG. So you have to be careful about the size and weight of battery that you use to fit in here, and have the canopy, you know, close over the top of it without modifying the canopy, and I didn't have to do any modification on the canopy. So with that battery in there and the landing gear, that was the other thing I was concerned about. I tried to position the landing gear so that I would not have a problem getting the CG with the batteries that I have to use. And so here's my balance on the stock CG. Looks like it's just ever so slightly nose heavy, possibly. It's hard to tell when you're holding it, but it looks to me like the nose is down there ever so slightly. But I still have plenty of room to move that battery back. And I can actually move the battery forward just a little bit and still get the canopy closed. So I think that's a good starting point for the balance on the CG. I would rather have it a little bit nose heavy than a neutral balance for the very first flight, because you never know how accurate the CGs are on the planes. The last few planes I have reviewed have been fairly tail heavy, going by the specified CG. So we'll see how that works. I've got it programmed, everything, all the control surfaces are in a neutral position. I tried not to go too aggressive with the control surface movement on its maiden flight. I would rather it be a little less authority than have too much authority and have it really twitchy. So hopefully I got that right. We will see. I do have the RadioLink Byme-A gyro in it, just in case I need it. So with the WFly SBUS receiver, and I will have links to those in the show notes, as well as the plane, and I'll put links in there to the battery that I'm using, because you know that it's going to work in here. So we'll put it in safe mode for the launch, and I will probably put it in safe mode for the landing, just so I can hopefully land it out there without tearing up the landing gear. So, but we'll be flying it in manual mode the vast majority of the time. So anyway, I will see you out at the field.
I have the Eachine flying fish out here. I've got more wind than I like to perform maidens in, but it is what it is. I've got it in safe mode. I've got my timer set for 5 minutes. The wind is 5 to 7 on the ground. But let's get out here and see if we can launch it. Gyro is all working in the proper direction. Alright. So we'll see if we can land it on the road. It'll be a little bit of a crosswind, but that's pretty typical. Alright, let's see. Into the wind. Alright, we'll give it about 60% throttle on launch. Launching. Alright, so I've got it in safe mode, so I am definitely restricted in pitch and roll, but not in rudder. Look at that. I think that 60% throttle may have actually been a little bit too much. I might try 50% throttle for launch throttle next time. Gosh, it certainly is well behaved in safe mode, I'll tell you that. We can bring it down a little bit. I did put some wing tape on the bottom of it, just so I could see it better. Tell the top from the bottom. Okay, there's full rudder right there. I might actually put a little more rudder in it. But it slews nice. Okay, there's full right rudder. Oh, well that turns pretty well. Let's try that to the left again. Okay, that's full aileron and full rudder. Yeah, that's not bad at all. Now we'll go back to the right, safe mode. Full aileron, full rudder. Yeah, I'm getting more authority to the right than I am to the left in safe mode on the aileron. Okay, so let's climb up a bit. Okay, now we are in full manual mode. Ah. It's hard to tell with the wind. Let's test pitch. Oh, no problem there. Plenty of power, guys. Plenty of power. That is sweet. You do have to add in a little back pressure on the elevator in the turns. Let's see what the roll authority looks like. Oh, I was afraid I hadn't given enough movement on the ailerons, but that looked good, didn't it? See that again. Oh, those are nice and axial too. Much better rolls than I thought it would have, being kind of a glider profile. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Sweet. Get it over here and do another loop from the side. Tons of power. I haven't decided if I need more pitch or not yet. Stay out of the sun, Tony. Yeah, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell what needs to be trimmed when you're flying in significant wind. But it does not lack for power at all. Look at that. Guys, that's climbing vertical. Yeah, I think I need more pitch. I need a little more pitch authority on it. try the roll the other direction. Nice. Excellent axial rolls in both directions. Tons of power. I think I'm going to like this plane. I'm starting to get my haptic now. I want to do, I can't really test the stall characteristics and all this wind, but I did want to, right now that we're at the end of the battery pack, I just want to test the vertical. Look at that. Holy cow, that has a ton of power, guys. Woo, that is awesome. Okay, I'm going to put it back. I got it back in safe mode. I want to bring it out here on the road, see if I can land it without tearing up my landing gear. Let's do our typical circuit here. I don't see anything coming from that direction. Stay below the sun. I think I'm going to increase my pitch a bit before I put it back in the air again. I don't see anything coming from that direction. Okay. Let's come back through here and see if we can land it without tearing up my nice landing gear that I fabricated for it. Okay. See if we can get it over the landing zone here, and quite a bit of crosswind here. Oh, 2, 3 bounces, I think. That was quite a bit more crosswind than I thought it had. Let's see. Okay, so it did bend up my nose wheel a little bit. The main landing gear still looks good. Let me bend my nose gear back. Alright, so I will meet you back at the hangar and give you my thoughts on this plane so far. I'll see you back there.
Alright, so what do you guys think of the Maiden flight? Not just a Maiden launch, but a Maiden flight. I was pretty surprised at how much power this plane had. I'm not sure if it has unlimited vertical, because after I climbed so high, and that was toward the end of the flight, the end of the 5-minute flight, and it was still climbing when I backed off the throttle, rolled it over, and pulled through in a split S. But I love this gyro and this SBUS receiver. They work flawlessly, and I was surprised at how much yaw authority I had with these dual motors, but you saw it when I was flying in safe mode. And so the ailerons are pretty restricted, and the pitch axis is pretty restricted. So giving it full aileron and full rudder, I could slew it around in a pretty tight space. I would like to have a little more rudder than I currently have, so I think I'm going to move the linkage down one hole on the servo arm rather than moving the linkage stop on the control horn to give me a little more movement on the rudder. I think I'll be there when I do that. I was kind of surprised. I thought that I would have too much authority on the pitch and too little authority on the roll, but the roll axis, I think, where I have the ailerons, because they're pretty far outbound on the wing, you have a lot of authority, even though they aren't real large control surfaces. So that was another thing that surprised me, was the roll authority that I had. There were nice snappy rolls, and they were very axial, which also surprised me, since this is more of a high wing type glider airframe. It's really hard to get, really tight axial rolls with that type of airframe. But they were, so I was surprised by that. The CG seems to be spot on as far as I can tell in that wind. And I had it balanced because I knew I was going to be flying in some significant wind today. I had it balanced right on the CG, specified CG, and it was just a tick nose heavy. If I hadn't been flying it in significant wind, I would have balanced it completely neutral. But having it a little bit nose heavy and significant wind helps you push through the wind without it zooming on you. So that seemed to work out really well. I need a little bit more in the pitch axis. The ailerons are good. I like the way the ailerons felt. The authority that I have on them, I don't know if I like the amount of expo that I have yet or not. I need to test it in calmer wind, since it does get moved around by the wind. So I want to get it to where it's very, very smooth. And I couldn't tell that today in the wind. The pitch axis was a little weak. There were times where I was coming down, you know, doing the loop or specifically doing a split S maneuver, where I waited, where I pulled through and I waited before I started pulling on the elevator. And there was a couple of times where I actually almost pulled in all the elevator that I had to pull it out of the dive. So I'm definitely going to be increasing the elevator. I only have 70% dual rate on the elevator, 70% dual rate on the ailerons. Ailerons are fine. I still have a bunch to play with on the pitch axis, so I'm going to bump that up to 80% dual rate before I take it back out. Make the linkage adjustment on the rudder that I spoke about, because I think I have 100% dual rate on the rudder. Seemed to be very well behaved in manual mode and all that wind. And it was awesome. And you saw how much crosswind I was coming into when I was coming in for a landing. And because I had so much of a headwind, this plane really slowed down before it touched down. Now, I was trying to set it down coming across the road before I missed the road, so I set it down pretty hard, and it ended up bouncing 3 times. So I ended up bending the front strut just ever so slightly. The main landing gear held up just fine. I think on smoother landings, I think that this 1mm steel strut on the front, I think will hold up fine. If it doesn't, then I'll replace it with a 2mm diameter steel strut like I have on the main landing gear. But I'm real happy. I'm happy with everything so far. So, and I tested the battery when I got back. I was not easy in the throttle. I had it up for 5 minutes, flying in a significant amount of wind. You typically use more throttle when you're flying in windy conditions than you do when it's calmer conditions. I still had 3.8 volts per cell. So the way I was flying it out there, I should be able to get 7 minutes of flight time, no problem, leaving about somewhere between 3.5 to 3.6 volts per cell. If you fly it a lot more docile than I tend to fly, then you're probably going to end up getting 8 to 9 minutes of flight time out of it easy. So it's not only does it have a ton of power, but it seems to be fairly efficient at the same time. And that's an old 3S 950 milliamp hour LiPo I had in it, not a new one. This is an old one. So I'm very happy with everything I've seen so far. I want to take it out in calmer conditions so I can see how well it handles doing all kinds of maneuvers, and then I will also test the stall characteristics. I didn't want to test the stall characteristics in windy conditions because if it drops a wing, you don't know if that's because it's a bad stall tendency or if it's the wind pushing it over. So, but I will test that out in calmer conditions, and we'll do some stall turns with it too. So stay tuned for that. I'm very happy with what I see so far. I want to put a couple more flight sessions on it before I give you my conclusion on this plane, but so far it's looking pretty awesome. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.